Welcome back to Ozarks Tonight. We're glad you're here. Our normal Friday guest, Steve Pokin of the Springfield News Leader, kind enough to join us once again. Steve, it's good to have you here as always.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks.
And as you do from occasion, you went back through some of the old Answer Man questions that you've gotten over the years, and were able to answer one from all the way back in August 2019 that was asking a question about a place that used to be open in the Fordland area that a lot of people in the area might remember from their childhood.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned before that, coming up with a column is always a balancing act of who gets back to you, who doesn't, when can we get a photo. So I always have two or three things that I'm kind of juggling, and almost always something comes through. So my plan A, plan B didn't come through today, so I went through my list of questions that I've not answered, and this one was from 2019, and it's a good one. I can't recall why I didn't answer it at the time. But it was a woman who had fond memories of going to Railroad City in Fordland when she was a kid. I had never heard of it. And she said, this was like 25 years ago, and is it still open? What happened to it? And she was thinking that maybe her kids would enjoy it. And I figured that, so the first place I go is to our archives, and I found stories about the place. It sounded like a really cool place. I read one from 1999, and what it is, it's a fella by the name of Mike Weldon and his wife Linda. They had like 50 acres in Fordland. And Mike has been in love with trains since he was a kid. He grew up, he was raised by his grandparents. He grew up near the Frisco rail yards in Springfield. And, his whole life is, even, as an adult, if he hears the train whistle or if he sees a puff of steam, like from a steam engine, he's like a kid at Christmas. So what he did, it first opened in 1983. He built a 1/8 scale model train yard. And he built the steam engine from a real Santa Fe Northern passenger locomotive from scratch. He was a carpenter, but he's just a handy guy. I mean, he learned how to weld, he learned how to run a lathe, he learned how to read blueprints, and he built this thing. And it grew and grew, and he eventually had 2.5 miles of track through his property, 3 trestles over gullies and creeks into the woods. He built a roundhouse, he built a depot. And it was a lot of kids would go there, their parents would take them, school trips. And on the one hand, he would ask for a $5 donation. And on the other hand, he did have I don't know how much of a business, but it was available for birthday parties, and he would charge money. But he clearly was not making a lot of money at this. And to be honest, when I called him, he loved it. It was his passion, but he seemed bitter about the way it ended. He was bitter that he didn't get more support, more donations, and for most of these years, he had it was the Ozark Old Steamers gathering for a weekend in June. And it ended 3 years ago. So 3 years, 8 years ago, this guy, Mike, had a triple bypass. He's 81 now. So he's not in the greatest health. But 3 years ago was the last one. And at this gathering, it got to be there were thousands of people would show up. And, parents with kids and a lot of railroad aficionados from around the world. This was a big deal. But it wasn't like, it wasn't like Six Flags or Silver Dollar City. It was like his hobby, and he wouldn't make a lot of money. So 3 years ago, what happens on this 3-day weekend, other people with locomotives, not just steam, but diesel would come. They have cars, and they would all run on his track. And apparently somebody was running a diesel locomotive, and according to Mike, he had too many people on it, and he couldn't make it up a hill. And so when that weekend ended, Mike went out there to he'd pick up all the track, and he was going to take one of his pieces of heavy equipment to lower the grade. And he fainted. He had health problems. He was in the hospital for 3 months. And he was assured help from a lot of people, he says, but when it came down to it, nobody helped him. He said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And when I talked to him earlier today, he was weary of dealing with the public, too. He told me some stories. Kid in front of his mother took one of the lanterns off the caboose, and the mother didn't say anything. That really irked him. There were two, what he said, very heavy-set sisters. And these are scale model cars that insisted on being in the same car. He didn't want that. He thought it was too much weight. The car broke, and they were adamant. They were angry at him because they wanted a refund. He still remembers that and seems to be bitter about that. So it's an interesting story, and I don't, the place is in disrepair, but he's got 14 passenger cars. He's got the steam locomotive, and it's sitting there, and he's done with it. It was a good thing, and there are stories, and I think you guys or TV stations have got video of him 10, 20 years ago, and you know, it's his passion is there, but that passion, it's been closed for 3 years, and he's done with it, and that passion appears in many ways to have vanished.
I could see how it could, you know, he made this his life's work, and he was the primary person that worked on this entire expansive project. And, you know, when people come in and maybe don't treat it to the standard that he would want it to be treated at, I could see that being a tough thing. Yeah, and he said he told some stories, and he seemed a little cantankerous. You know, I got one shot with him. I'm on the phone talking to him, and I can tell this is a guy, if you get something wrong, he's gonna be upset. So I said, your locomotive you built, it's a steam engine, right? And he basically told me a story about some stupid person who once asked him the same question. So I don't know what he was like 20 or 30 years ago, but today it sounds like he is definitely done with it. Well, it's definitely a unique setting to have an attraction, if you will, like that. Something that, maybe in other parts of the country you wouldn't see something like that, and it's something that you don't see a whole lot of anymore. It's just kind of unique, and there's video out there on YouTube amongst other places. Folks want to take a look. It was a unique thing for sure. It was.
He invited me to go out there, and I would love to have, but as I said, in juggling columns, I had to write this one for Sunday, and I still might go out there and take a look.
Yeah, deadlines come into play for folks that are out of the business. It is a real thing. All right, Steve, so the column's coming out on Sunday.
Yes.
All right. Folks at home, pick it up, check it out. It is definitely a cool read, especially for folks that have been here in the area for a while, or if you're just interested in trains or the railroad.
Absolutely.
This is definitely unique. All right, Steve, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure.
All right, we'll be back with more Ozarks Tonight right after this.